Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something a lot of us think about, tracking our daily expenses. And it's interesting because this time, the deep dive is going to be based on some Spanish language sources some of you sent in, excerpts from a video, actually, all about building like the habit of tracking those daily expenses.
Yeah.
So, it just goes to show you personal finance is something everybody's thinking about, right?
Yeah, it really is universal, isn't it?
No matter where you are in the world.
Yeah.
And what we're going to be unpacking today are the 4 key steps this video lays out. Defining your why, your how, making it a daily routine, and then reviewing and adjusting and using automation, all that good stuff.
I love that. I'm really excited to dive into this. I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how these sort of cultural differences maybe or just different perspectives on this very universal topic, how they play out.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Okay, so the video starts out with this analogy, right? Like, imagine having X-ray vision into your spending habits.
Right.
Knowing where every dollar goes. And, full confession.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I used to think budgeting was all about restriction and deprivation.
Uh-huh.
Like almost like a punishment.
Yeah.
Not a path to freedom.
Right.
Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, 100%. I think that's a super common misconception, and especially when we're sort of bombarded with all these messages about, cutting back and sacrificing. It's easy to fall into that mindset. But what I find really interesting about this video is it really focuses on the psychological impact of just becoming aware of your spending patterns.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not about judgment. It's about empowerment.
So it's more about understanding your habits than like punishing yourself for them.
Exactly, yeah. And they actually highlight a study in this video that found that simply recording your expenses can lead to a 14% reduction in spending.
Wow.
Just the act of writing it down.
That's pretty convincing.
It's crazy. It's like it seems like that awareness just creates a natural shift in your behavior.
It's amazing. So the video talks about finding your why. Why are you tracking?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And they list all these reasons, right? Wanting more control, working towards a savings goal, maybe identifying waste, just getting a sense of peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious for you, like, what is your biggest motivator?
For me, it's really about aligning my spending with my values. So when I track my expenses, it's like I'm holding up this mirror to my priorities and saying, okay, am I spending my money on things that truly matter to me?
Yeah.
Or am I just kind of letting it slip away on things that, I don't really care about?
Right.
And it helps me stay focused on what's important.
I love that. It's like a reality check.
Yeah.
For your wallet, right?
Exactly.
To make sure it's all in sync with your values and everything. Okay, so you got your why. Now the video jumps into the how, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to do this?
Yeah.
And they really emphasize finding a system that works for you.
Yeah.
Whether it's, super simple, like they even mentioned just using a plain old notebook.
Yeah.
Or, something really tech savvy. Now, I've got to admit, I'm kind of a tech person, so I love the idea of using apps and spreadsheets and all that.
Yeah.
But do you think there's a risk of like overcomplicating things?
That's such a good question. I think the key here is to choose a method that you're actually going to stick with, right?
Right.
So if you're not a spreadsheet person, forcing yourself to use a spreadsheet is probably just going to lead to frustration, and you're eventually going to abandon the whole tracking process.
Right.
So the video really stresses, finding what feels natural and sustainable for you.
Right. Like if you're constantly fighting against your system,
Exactly.
you're going to give up.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say our listener has picked their method.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their notebook, their app, whatever.
What's the next step? How do they make tracking expenses like a daily habit?
Well, the video suggests weaving this habit into your existing routine.
Okay.
And they offer 3 specific times to try. Before bed, immediately after a purchase, or during a break.
Interesting.
So the idea is to sort of capitalize on these moments that you already have instead of trying to carve out extra time in your day,
Right. I can see how those would fit in.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do those work for you, or do you think those work for everybody? What are your thoughts on that?
I really like I think the beauty of these suggestions is they can adapt to different people's styles, right? So, before bed allows you to kind of reflect on the day's spending. Immediately after a purchase encourages mindfulness in the moment.
Right.
During a break, provides a quick and easy check-in. It's really about finding what fits your individual flow.
I like that. It's about finding the right moment
Yeah.
to kind of integrate it.
Exactly.
But even with the best intentions, I think we all have days where we forget. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I know, I do. So what happens if you miss a day or two? Is the whole thing ruined?
No, you don't have to be perfect.
Okay.
The key is to build in some forgiveness.
Okay.
The video emphasizes that occasional slip-ups are totally normal. It's more important to focus on consistency over perfection.
Okay, good. Good. That's reassuring.
Yeah.
But how do you stay motivated? How do you avoid feeling off track?
Yeah, the video touches on the power of visual motivation, which I find fascinating.
Okay.
They suggest creating charts, using color coding, basically anything that allows you to see your progress in a tangible way.
Really? I'm kind of skeptical of those charts and graphs. They feel kind of elementary to me.
I know what you mean, but think of it like a progress bar in a video game.
Okay.
Right? You can see how far you've come, and it motivates you to keep going and reach that next level. And, but plus there's just something satisfying about seeing your savings grow visually.
That's interesting. Okay, maybe I need to revisit that. Okay, so we've got the why, the how, the routine.
Yeah.
What else does the video highlight as far as making this stick?
Well, they dive into this amazing world of automation.
Oh, here we go. This is where I get excited.
Me too. This is where things get really interesting, right? So we're talking about leveraging technology to streamline that whole tracking process.
Okay, tell me more. What kind of automation tips do they have?
So they suggest exploring things like budgeting apps and spreadsheets that can automatically categorize your transactions and generate reports.
Oh, nice.
They also talk about automating fixed expenses and savings contributions so you can take those tasks completely off your plate.
That's fantastic. It's like, yeah, all that mental energy that just frees up.
Right.
But isn't there a risk of becoming too detached from your finances if everything's on autopilot?
That is a valid concern, and the video actually addresses that directly. So, while automation is incredibly powerful, it shouldn't replace mindful awareness, right?
Right.
It's still important to take a moment to acknowledge each expense, even if it's being tracked automatically. Just a quick little mental check-in.
Right. So it's about that balance.
Exactly, yeah.
Efficiency, but also staying aware.
Being the captain of your ship, even if you have the autopilot on.
I like that. And speaking of staying on course, the video also highlights the importance of check-ins and course correction.
Yes.
This is something I've always struggled with. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to take a step back, So what kind of check-ins are they recommending?
They emphasize both weekly and monthly reviews. So the weekly check-in is more about catching any missed expenses, making sure you're aligned with your budget, and you're staying on track with your savings goals.
Okay.
Just a quick pulse check. But the monthly review is where things get really interesting. It becomes more strategic, right? So you're not just looking at individual transactions, you're analyzing patterns and trends. It's a chance to see, okay, are there any areas where I might need to adjust my budget? Celebrate your successes, really just reflect on what you've learned about your financial habits over the past month.
It's like a financial self-assessment.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value in these monthly reviews, but I got to be honest. I'm not always great at sticking to a schedule. Any tips for making sure those reviews actually happen?
Yeah, the video suggests treating these reviews like important meetings, right? So actually schedule them in your calendar. And here's a little trick I found helpful. Schedule them for a time when you're naturally inclined to reflect. So maybe a Sunday evening or a quiet Friday afternoon, something like that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that working. So we've talked about staying motivated and on track, but sometimes tracking expenses can feel a little, boring. Does the video address that at all?
They actually do, and it's such a simple suggestion. They say pair your tracking routine with something you genuinely enjoy. So put on your favorite playlist, light a scented candle, maybe treat yourself to a little reward afterwards. Just create a positive association with the task.
Oh, I like that. So you're turning it into a self-care moment.
Exactly.
Instead of this horrible thing you have to do.
Yeah, take the pressure off.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive,
Yeah.
Lisa. We've talked about the power of just being aware of your spending, finding your why, your how, building a daily routine, automation, those check-ins. Why does all this matter?
I think the biggest misconception about tracking expenses is that it's all about deprivation and restriction. But in reality, it's about gaining control and making conscious choices that align with your values and your goals.
Right. So it's not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the things that are important.
Exactly. When you track your expenses, you're essentially creating a roadmap for your financial future. You can see where your money is going, identify any areas where you might be overspending, and make adjustments so that your spending aligns with your priorities. It really empowers you to live a more intentional and fulfilling life.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's like you're taking control of the wheel and steering your finances where you want them to go. But, you know, life happens, unexpected expenses pop up, right?
Yeah.
Does that derail the whole system?
Life is unpredictable, and unexpected expenses are definitely going to happen. So the key is to build flexibility into your system. The video actually suggests creating a buffer category in your budget specifically for those unforeseen costs.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. So whether it's, a car repair or a medical bill or an unexpected trip, having that buffer built in helps you absorb those expenses without throwing your whole plan off track.
It's like having a little cushion, a financial
Is that
cushion.
correct?
What about those bigger goals, though?
Yeah.
Like saving for a down payment on a house or retirement. How does tracking your daily expenses play into that?
Well, that's where the long-term vision comes in, right? So by tracking your daily expenses, you're gaining a deep understanding of your spending patterns, but also your capacity to save. And that awareness allows you to set realistic financial goals and create a plan to actually achieve them. So it's like you're connecting those daily actions to a bigger, more inspiring destination.
It's like all those little expenses you track are stepping stones,
Yeah.
towards a bigger goal. Sometimes, I'll be honest, like the thought of tracking every single penny feels really overwhelming. Is there a way to simplify it without sacrificing accuracy?
Absolutely. Remember, the goal is to find a system that works for you, right? So don't be afraid to experiment and adjust as needed. The video really emphasizes that, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what feels manageable and sustainable for your unique lifestyle.
So progress over perfection.
Exactly, yeah. And finding joy in the journey. Remember, mastering your finances isn't about deprivation, it's about empowerment and creating a life of abundance on your own terms.
Love it. Okay, so we've covered a lot today, from the psychology of all this to like the nuts and bolts of automation and these check-ins. Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that tracking expenses isn't just about numbers, right? It's about understanding your values, aligning your spending with your priorities, and ultimately creating a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. It's about taking control of your finances so they can support the life that you want to live.
Yeah, it's about creating a financial plan that works for you, not against you. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So thank you so much for sharing all your insights and expertise with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the art of tracking expenses. We hope you've learned something valuable today.
Wow, so much great information. I have to say, I'm feeling a lot more motivated about this whole tracking thing. I used to see it as like this chore, this restrictive thing, but now I'm kind of starting to see it as like this tool for empowerment and freedom.
Yeah. It's such a shift in perspective, isn't it?
Totally.
And speaking of shifting perspectives, one thing I found really interesting in the video was this emphasis on making tracking not just easy, but enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they actually suggest pairing your tracking routine with something you love, like listening to music or having a cup of tea or lighting a candle, like turning it into this little ritual.
Oh, I love that.
Wow.
It's like self-care, but for your finances. Exactly, yeah. Take the pressure off and make it feel like a positive choice rather than this obligation.
Yeah, totally.
And that ties into, making this habit sustainable, right? And speaking of sustainability, they also emphasize the importance of those regular reviews and making adjustments as you go. They recommend setting aside time for those weekly and monthly check-ins.
Right. We touched on those earlier.
Yeah.
But why are those so important? It's easy to forget to do that,
Yeah, totally. So the weekly check-in is like a quick temperature check, right? It's a chance to catch any missed expenses, make sure you're still aligned with your budget, adjust your spending if you need to, just stay on top of things. But the monthly review, that's where you really dive deep and analyze your overall financial picture, right?
So it's like zooming out,
Exactly. You're reflecting on your spending patterns,
Hmm.
identifying any trends, any areas for improvement, celebrating successes. And it's also a great time to revisit your goals and make sure that your daily actions are still supporting that long-term vision.
Right. Yeah. So it's like they're not just random, they're actually connected.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super helpful. But I mean, let's be real, right? Life happens. Sometimes we have those unexpected expenses. How do they deal with that?
Yeah, they recommend creating a buffer category in your budget specifically for those unforeseen costs, right? So whether it's a car repair, medical bill, last minute trip, having that buffer built in can help you absorb those expenses without derailing your whole plan.
That's so smart.
Yeah, it's like a cushion.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not totally thrown off now.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so wow, we've talked about so much today. Being aware, finding a system that works, automation, those check-ins.
Yeah.
As we're wrapping up this deep dive, what's like one last piece of wisdom you would leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that mastering your finances isn't about deprivation. It's about empowerment. It's about having the knowledge and the tools to make conscious choices that align with your values and support the life that you want to live.
I love that. So it's about creating a financial life that feels good, not restrictive.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your money so that it can support your dreams and aspirations.
Well said. And on that note, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your expertise.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the art of tracking those daily expenses. We hope you learned something, and we hope you're feeling inspired to kind of embark on your own financial journey. Just remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep creating a financial life that really works for you and reflects what you want.